Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, in which we're going to show you how MarkLogic helps unlock value from your complex data and enable data agility. My name is Alicia Saya. I'm with the marketing team at MarkLogic, and I'll be moderating today's session. With me today, I have my colleague David from our solutions engineering team, and he's going to show you how to use the MarkLogic data platform to extract information from PDF documents, map this new information to an existing data model, and visualize the enriched data in Tableau. Now, before we go any further, I want to let you know that your lines are muted, but you can ask a question at any time using the Q&A section of the screen. And we do have time reserved at the end to answer those questions. Also, after the webinar, you'll get a link to the recording, so don't worry if you missed anything. Now, I've got just one slide here to give you a little context about MarkLogic and our platform. Anytime there's a desire to do more with information and to do it faster, visionary organizations turn to MarkLogic to solve problems other vendors can't. Now, MarkLogic helps you get more value from your complex data and do it faster by delivering data agility. Now, we define data agility as the ability to quickly and easily make changes to how any information is interpreted and acted on at any scale for any purpose. Now, we've seen that the old way of working with data is no longer fit for purpose. It's too brittle, it's limited by silos, and it's application-centric, which means lots of point-to-point integrations, ETL-type operations, and time delays. Traditional data management can't accommodate change easily or quickly, nor keep up with the pace of business. So we believe that the better way is to take a data-centric approach, which massively increases our customers' ability to make better decisions, armed with quality and complete data from a single data platform. Our customers want to work with information differently. They want to connect information, create and interpret meaning, and consume data along with everything that is known about it, and for a variety of purposes across the enterprise. We provide a multi-model data platform packed with capabilities like built-in search, semantic AI, mastering, and security that lets them do just that. Now, today's webinar is focused on how to use tools in the MarkLogic data platform to connect, create, and consume data from unstructured documents. And now I'm going to turn it over to David to show you how it works.
My name is David Kaaret. I'm here to talk about how firms can benefit from a common MarkLogic use case, the Universal Data Repository. Today I'll show an example of how to populate a universal repository with unstructured data. So what are we going to do today? We're going to take PDF documents, extract interesting information from them, and make that data available in SQL and access it in Tableau. We'll be using two tools for this. These are MarkLogic Semaphore and Data Hub Central applications. Our primary focus today will be Semaphore, as we have other sessions focusing on the Data Hub. With Semaphore, we'll only be using a small part of its capabilities, that is, its fact extraction. With Semaphore, you can take Word, PDF, and other unstructured data, extract the implied document structures and other data from the documents. You can build ontologies, which understand your data from the business glossary level to the firm level to the level of individual documents and records. Today, we're only going to limit ourselves to fact extraction. Data Hub Central is MarkLogic's data integration tool. We'll discuss it at length when we use it to process Semaphore's output. So what are we going to do today? First, we'll define a fact extraction model in Semaphore, use it to extract facts from a set of PDFs, Then we'll go to the Data Hub Central and define a data model and populate that data model with our extracted facts, which will then expose the data as SQL, or then we'll access the data from Tableau. So the first step in fact extraction is determining what information you want to pull from your document. So our information is credit reports. And so here's an example. And it has a lot of data. There is no schema. This is a PDF file, so there's an implied schema, name, colon, other names, colon, but there is no formal XML or JSON style key value pairs. But this has names and social security numbers, birth dates, the date hired, what the position was, and a lot of other information. So you scan through it, and we're making a simplified example here. We're not going to try to grab all of the information, but we're going to grab information like name and social security number, the birth date, the employer name, their location, and the position. So once you've decided what information you're interested in grabbing, you come to Semaphore, and this is the primary Semaphore UI, and you start explaining it to Semaphore what you're interested in extracting. So Semaphore can do a lot more than we're going to do today. Both, it can do far more than fact extraction. Also within fact extraction, it can do a lot more than you're going to see being done. And so in our knowledge model management, we have quite a few different models defined, and we're going to focus on our credit report fact extraction. So again, there's going to be a lot of screens. Most of the screens we're not going to be touching. And the reason for this, again, is that Semaphore is capable of far more than you see here. But so once you're doing fact extraction, the first thing you do is you want to define what information you're going to be extracting. And so these correspond to the fields that we saw in the PDF. So we're going to want to grab the date hired, the location, the name, the address, the birth date, phone number, the report date, information like that. And so the way it looks is that this is a fact name, and that we're grouping information into the employment section here. And here we would be grouping the information into the personal information section. And so you have that, and you give it a preferred label, which is by default the class name, but you can make them differently if you want to expose the information to your users separately than you're storing it internally. And that's really it. So there's nothing else you need to do for that. And then we basically do the same thing here. It's a fact name of type address. It's a part of the personal information class of information. And so you define each of the facts that you're interested in, and then now you move on. And the next step is content types. So generally, you're going to have lots of different kinds of contents. These are broad groupings. So these are credit. You could have mortgages, bank statements. And then for each of those, you're going to have like multiple different variants of credit reports. So we're defining fact extraction for one variant, but you start with a broad listing of different kinds of information that you're going to want to track. And when we get to the Data Hub, that will correspond to the classes. These broad items here will correspond to the classes you see in the Data Hub. And then you have fact extractors. This is where we pull the information out of the PDF and use it to populate our fact names. So this corresponds to the harmonization or curation step in the Data Hub that we'll look at. And so you're going to create a fact extractor for each type of credit report. So you may be getting Word documents or XML documents. You'll get information from Experian and other credit report companies, and they're going to display the information differently. The extraction processes will be different. We're always going to go against the same fact names, but how we extract them will be different. And so the credit report PDF is a document type of class. That's the concept class. There are many different kinds of concept classes here, and we're not going to go through them, but This is a type document. We'll see some others later on. And again, it has a default preferred label of credit PDF. And some of this information here is coming from, as we go along and create our fact extractors, this will automatically populate out. And so there's really not that much you need to do here. The only key thing you needed to enter was that this was expressing information of type credit. So this credit report PDF maps up into, this is the parent, there can be many children, and it maps up there. And so the first thing you need to do is, once you've created it, in a production system, you may have thousands of documents that you're extracting facts from, and you may have dozens of content types and 100 possibly different fact extractors. And you don't want Semaphore to waste its time trying to extract facts into the wrong model. And so what you have to do is define an anchor so that Semaphore knows that when it gets the document, you don't tell it when you're extracting that this should be extracted with this fact extractor. Semaphore figures it out itself as you run the fact extraction, either one by one or as a group. And so what you do is you define an anchor. And so to come back here, you have to determine what your anchor is. And so we could just do credit report colon. We're going to actually break this into two pieces, credit and report, and then say they both need to be close to each other, and that's just to show a little bit of the power. The easiest thing would be just to say if it's credit report colon, then it is of type credit report PDF. But so we come here and we have to, you have an anchor, and then the anchor has a context, and then the context is describing how the data is laid out here. So the data, we're saying this is near, unordered, across phases, in sentences. So we could have a lot of choices. We could say they're in different paragraphs, the different items that make up our context. We could say they're columns and rows, rows and columns, all of these different things, and we're saying they have to be close to each other in sentences. And then we're saying down here that there's going to be more than one, and all of them need to be within 3 words of each other. And so we have 2. One is that we're just saying if it's got the word here report, then it meets the report context. And here we're saying that if it's credit, then it meets the credit context. And then again, when we go to our identify, so those are the context anchors. And then the 2 of those combined make up the credit report context. And so once Semaphore sees that, Semaphore understands that this is a document of type credit report PDF, and that it should now start doing fact extraction from those. And so we have 3 classes that correspond to the fact names we laid out. One is a standalone report date, one is personal information, and one is employment. So they're all similar in this case, so we're not going to spend a lot of time. We're just going to walk through some quick examples, and then you can expand those as you please. And so personal information section is a document fact, and then we're grouping the facts as personal information, which corresponds to the way we laid out our fact names. And this fact is in the credit report PDF, which when we created it, we had to say this was a subset of that. And then these are the fact extractors for the personal information section. So as we create these, you don't type in here. As you create these, this is auto-populating. And so let's look at, say, the name. And so again, we need a context. We need to determine how do you know it's a name. And you have to define an anchor. You have to say that this is, how do we, so before we were anchoring the entire document, now we're anchoring where is the name inside of the document. And so we're saying that it's name colon. So if we come here, we see that it's name colon. But one thing to keep in mind is that's not the only place there's a name colon, because here we have employer name colon. So if we just limited ourselves to saying name colon, we would get false hits because we would be putting the company name here as well. And so we put an exclude results, that in our employer section, we have an employer name anchor, which is the employer name colon. And so when we're figuring out if it's a personal name, we're saying that it's name colon, but exclude everything that's employer name colon. And so Semaphore, again, Semaphore can handle a lot. It could figure out names even if there is no name. If you have other interesting facts, that 4 or 5 of them and mean it's probably a name, we can figure out it's a name. There's a lot of different ways. We're just doing a very simple case, and you should attend a Semaphore class to learn the real information here. And then, but again, so that's just anchoring. This is, as we created this class, we had to say it was a subclass, which is where that comes from, and we give it a label, and then that's how we anchor it, and then we also have to define how do we extract it. So that's a captured fact. So that's the concept class for here, and we're going to extract that as names. So that's something that appeared in our fact names, and so this has to link to one of those, and that's part of the personal information context. That's what we defined up here. So when we created this class, we had to say it was a subclass of that. And this is something that you do have to fill out for this kind of information, that you need to understand that names can be variable length. And so we're going to say, okay, you can capture anything for the next 50 words, which is really going too far, but it's okay. Semaphore needs to figure out where the name ends and where something else begins. And in other cases, like with the dates, we have fixed structure. So then we do the non-greedy skip count, where you're more carefully specifying and giving Semaphore more information, so it doesn't need to figure out as much. But so that's it. So again, we could be doing a lot more, but that's really all we need to capture the names here. And that's kind of it, that everything else is similar to this. So there's a number of ways that you can extract facts from your documents once you've created your fact extraction model. And you can do it in real time by making calls to Semaphore. And there's a user interface where you can test out one document at a time, either by putting in a URI or providing content to see how your fact extraction model is going. And what we're going to do here is the bulk loading tool. So there is a CLS client, and Semaphore, you can call that through Java, and you point at the directory where your documents are and the directory where you want your output to go, and you run it, and then Semaphore does it as a batch. And we will then do this, take a quick look at what the documents look like, and then move on to the Data Hub Central, where we can explain how to get that into a form where we can expose the data as SQL. Okay, so once it's done running, again, we originally started out with PDFs that look like this, and then once Semaphore has engaged in its fact extraction, we end up with content that looks like this. So we've extracted our date hired, our employer location, the name, the position, the birth date, the name, and report date. So this is what we're going to now be loading into MarkLogic and the Data Hub Central. So now we're going to move on to Data Hub Central. So we have other sessions where we cover this more in depth, even in the context of the Universal Repository. So we're going to go through this part quickly. But what the Data Hub Central is its MarkLogic tool for integrating diverse data sets and then making them available to a wide variety of use patterns, including Sparkle, SQL, and documents. So in this case, there's the 3 different components we need to do. We need to load the data we got from Semaphore, and we need to have a model describing it, and we need to curate the results of the Semaphore output into the data model. So here we have load for many different data types, and so this would have one of these for each source of data. So like if we had 4 different credit reports, we would have 4 different credit risk loading procedures. And it's fairly simple. The key thing is that Semaphore is outputting the data as XML. So we have to specify that. And in order to make the data more accessible, we're going to put it in a directory called credit risk. And then there's just some other things you can do here. And so we want to store it in our staging database and not the final database, although we could do either. So that's what we got. And to run it, you just explain, you point it at the appropriate directory. And so these are all the Semaphore files that we generated. And you run that, and they all get loaded in. Okay, so once they're loaded in, we could explore the data, but for now we'll just move on. So the next step is that you need a model for the data. And so we have a model here showing our entire many sources of data. This is a data repository for all aspects of a mortgage system. And in our case, we're talking about this credit report. And so you simply want to specify what properties are in your class, and these will correspond to what we've been extracting. So that's simple enough. And then the final step is the curation step. And so we have a data model, and we have fact extraction reports, and we have to map one into the other. And so here, so on the left, the Data Hub Central takes examples of the files that we're receiving from Semaphore and then uses them to populate our choices here. So that you can come and you have each of these, and then in here you can see, so this is employer name. So we would just scan down here. So the Semaphore output is actually fairly complex because it can do a lot more than just key value pairs. But you can see here that we do have all the information we're interested in. So here's the employer location, the employer name. So we would just select the value. And also, in this case, we could, in some cases you might be interested in how good a fit it is. In this case, they're all 100% because it was fairly simple. But in other more complex situations, it won't be an absolute score of 100% certainty. There'll be a lower score. And so you could also be tracking what is the score. That's something you might be interested in. But in this case, we would just pick the employer name. And so you fill out each of those for that, and then you're all done. And so then you can run this report, and so now it's running. We just loaded a variety of data a minute ago, and then now we've actually curated it. And so now we're going to the final database, so the staging database has the raw as is data, and then this has the final output, and you can see that we have successfully grabbed the information, applied it to our data model. And that's it. So now MarkLogic is fully populated, and the key thing is that in this data model, everything that's defined here is automatically exposed as SQL. And so by simply populating our MarkLogic instance, we are automatically creating a SQL view of the data. And when we come here, each of these tables represents a table in our data model, except for this household accounts. And I'll just briefly explain what that is. So MarkLogic has a Optic API, which allows you to create views of data, which can include search, Sparkle, SQL, document filtering, and geospatial, all in a single query, and then that can be exposed as a SQL view. And so that is a very powerful tool that we're not going to cover here. But what this does is this combines Sparkle householding information along with SQL information, and then allows you to enhance risk reporting by combining, instead of just doing analysis of individual customers, you can do it against the families of their customers and look at the families as a whole. But that's covered in our other session. In this case, it's the credit report. And so here we have the fields that make up the credit report when we populate it. So we started with this, and then now we are ending up with the same information exposed this way. And the most interesting way here is to go to this dashboard. And so we have the geospatial, we have the mortgage types, and then we have, here's a dashboard. This is a count of the different kinds of positions of the people who are listed in that credit report. So in our original credit report, we had this field called position, and then now here we can see that the same properties now being counted. So we've gone from purely unstructured text, and we've extracted facts, we've modeled it and provided SQL views, and then now Tableau has combined that with other information, which is coming from geospatial sources, it's coming from SQL databases, it's coming from JSON files, it's coming from XML, and then we can combine those, and from your end user's perspective, all they need to know is SQL, because from your end user's perspective, these are all just SQL tables and SQL views that they're accessing. They do their work, they get all the power of Semaphore, they get all the power of MarkLogic, and then they can just go and run with it and do their analysis and taking advantage of the new data world that exists out there without their having to become experts at it. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That was great. Now, before we move to the Q&A, I wanted to sum up the reasons our customers choose MarkLogic to solve their complex data problems. Now, first, the MarkLogic platform is unique in that it treats data and metadata as a single data resource, regardless of format, type, location, or quantity. Data, including all its metadata, is connected or ingested as is, ready for immediate consumption without the need for normalization, transformation, or simplification. Our semantic AI technology uses machine learning and knowledge models to synthesize, enrich, extract, and harmonize all types of metadata, which greatly simplifies creating and sharing what the data means. Now, we store this meaning with the data for informed search, contextual applications, grounded data for analytics, rigorous data governance, and transformational data security. The robust set of capabilities of our data platform benefit our customers by enabling data agility, the ability to easily make powerful changes to how data is interpreted and acted on, ease of connection, integrate existing data sources, repositories, applications, and workflows, delivery of information in context to its use case and to its intended audience, and finally, data trust, which is earned via traceable, transparent, repeatable, and auditable results, understandable by business users. Now, all facts and interpretations are part of the business record. So with MarkLogic, you reduce the effect of data and knowledge silos in your organization with a single data source, along with everything that's known about what the data means. And this is all supported with enterprise-grade database capabilities like security, scalability, availability, language support, temporality, interfaces, and a standards-based architecture. Now, if you think these are benefits your organization can take advantage of, we'd love to have a conversation. MarkLogic is being used around the world to support a wide variety of use cases involving complex data. We'd be very interested to hear about your use case, and we can have a technical meeting with your team to discuss. Also, if you're a developer and you want to jump right in, we have free training through MarkLogic University. Now with that, we've got a few minutes to answer some of your questions live. And if we don't get time to answer them live, we will follow up with you after using the email that you registered with. So let's open it up. All right, David, I see we've got a few questions waiting for us here. First one is, does this only work for Tableau?
No, our MarkLogic exposes its data through ODBC, so anything that can access ODBC, whether it's Python programs or Power BI or Tableau, will all work equally well.
Okay, cool. One came in also when you're talking about the anchoring in Semaphore, it asks, how resilient is that anchoring? What happens if the structure of the document changes?
So the anchoring is a rule that you make, and it's got a lot of flexibility. But if the structure changes, then you're going to have to adapt to it. So it's not, if the structure changes, it's not going to know it changed. But you're going to have to spot that errors are happening and adjust the mechanism by which it's being done, which in the worst case scenario is you might make a second class there to handle different use cases and map them into the same thing. So that is something if you're going to have an enterprise system where you have hundreds of different kinds of documents being fed into it, anchoring is one place you're going to want to make sure you're capturing the right stuff, both at the document level and at the level of the individual facts you're extracting.
Okay. Here's another Tableau related one. I'm not sure I quite understand this. Are you using the Tableau native MarkLogic connector, or is it via API?
This one is going through the MarkLogic ODBC. It's not accessing MarkLogic through a proprietary API. So in the other webinar I did on this, I actually walked through the mechanics of that, so that you just go in there and set up your ODBC connector to, the only thing your Tableau user needs to know about MarkLogic to use this is what is your ODBC username and password to connect to the ODBC driver of MarkLogic, and then that becomes stored there. And so you can do that by clicking on, MarkLogic is a name connector there, and that will do it. You could also do it through the generic ODBC, but both will work.
Okay. And we're talking about the Optic. You were talking about the Optic API earlier. So, what other kinds of views can be produced with that?
Yeah, so Optic is very powerful. What Optic is it's like, if you think of the Lord of the Rings, one tool to rule them all. So MarkLogic has a lot of sophisticated query technology. So you can do document search, you can do filtering of documents, you can do SQL queries, you can do geospatial, you can do Sparkle. And then Optic is a wrapper around all of those. And so the end results, when you create the Optic query, you can register the result with MarkLogic, which automatically exposes that as a SQL view in ODBC. But then you can also make it accessible in a lot of other ways through API, because not all the results aren't always in a tabular format where you really want to expose them. Sometimes you're going to want to return complex, JSON-like documents. And then those can be exposed through APIs and everything else. So you're not forcing yourself into SQL by using Optic. It's just that everything can be exposed as SQL using Optic.
Okay, cool. The one, all right, so this is on metadata creation, and you were showing that with semaphore, and it sounds like their question says, I gather there are two ways to create metadata in MarkLogic, Semaphore, and Data Hub Central. So why are there two, and how do I decide which one I should use?
Yeah. So Data Hub Central is really where your data is fairly structured. So anytime you have regularities in your data that look kind of like columns in a relational database, Data Hub Central can generate, for example, triples from columns in a JSON, XML, or SQL-based data, as long as it's consistent and you can define it ahead of time. And Semaphore is for more unstructured, less where you don't know exactly, and you have more squishiness, and you need to spend more time modeling it and defining what you're going to do, and then we'll generate the metadata from that. So basically, think of it as if it's SQL data or close to SQL data, use Data Hub to generate your metadata. If it's not at that level of structure, then use Semaphore.
All right, great. Well, Bright Talk is warning me that we have gone over time, so we should probably wrap this up. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, David, for the great presentation. And stay tuned to our Bright Talk channel. We do demo webinars every month. We also have our vision series that runs and our data acceleration series. So we'll have a lot more content coming out soon. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to end things now.
Okay. Thank you.